again, in no particular order, was looking at surrounding division calendars to see how we might better align with those divisions that are around us. So for purposes, again, of sort of redundancy, I've shared with the board that we are one of 3 school divisions in the Northern Virginia Region 4 that are post-Labor Day start, the city of Alexandria and Arlington County being the other 2. Alexandria has already committed that they are going to make the move to a pre-Labor Day start, and Arlington currently is underway with a survey, and there's a very high likelihood that they will be moving to a pre-Labor Day start as well. So I share that just for information. So when we think about, for example, where our staff live, Arlington, Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William, Alexandria, one of the things you'll see in the data is that there's a clear pattern of what our staff are hopeful for with respect to a school calendar. So here are the calendar comparisons, and there are 4 options that emerged from the work of the ad hoc committee. On the left-hand side of this chart, you'll see the major events or the major parts of the calendar, if you will. The first day of school, Mason Moving Day, so there wouldn't be school at GM or at Henderson. The last day of school and graduation. Then working across from left to right, you'll see the pre-Labor Day option A, option B, post-Labor Day option A, post-Labor Day option B. All of them have differentiated points of time with respect to the starting date, except for the pre and post. So the pre-Labor Day options A and B both would start on August 24th. And one would end on June 2nd, and the other also would end on June 2nd for graduation. Graduation would be June 2nd, and the last day of school in pre-Labor Day A would be June 8th. Pre-Labor Day B would be June 10th. And then the post-Labor Days would both start the day directly after Labor Day. One would end on the 22nd, the other would end on the 23rd. And then you'll see in there those Mason Moving Days that correlate to where winter break falls. So if you look at the first Mason Moving Day, you'll see the flexibility based on the calendar selection where those Mason Moving Days would be with respect to the winter holiday. So one of the questions that's come up a number of times that we've been trying to field through the FAQ in a few different ways is why was there no calendar option for the 31st of August? And I think it's a really interesting and good question to ask. And it's also interesting to note that Arlington County has put their survey out, and right at the top of the Arlington County survey it says August 31st was considered and rejected for a variety of reasons. So the August 31st day is an awkward day when it comes to building a calendar. And so I want to give you some reasons for that, but before I do that, I want to dispel as best I can any rumor or doubt that you may have about that 31st date. By saying earlier, I indicated to you, the board, and to the community that the charge was to develop 2 pre-Labor Day and 2 post-Labor Day calendars. We never took any start dates off the table for the committee. The committee was wide open. They could start the year up to 14 days prior to Labor Day, and they had a lot of flexibility. However, the committee did consider the 31st at one of their very first meetings, and they almost immediately rejected that option as they started to put it together. And there's a number of reasons that they considered the 31st, but due to those concerns, eliminated that. They began looking at it. They also looked at a midweek start, but thinking about that 31st, it created some very specific challenges around balancing of quarters, looking at where teacher workdays fell with respect to the end of the quarters. So some of them would fall, for example, midweek. Some of them might fall because of where holidays are, knowing that teachers would like to have a teacher workday at the end of the quarter. If there was a holiday on the Monday and the quarter ended on Wednesday, that would mean that there would be a Thursday off so that teachers could do grades. We felt like it was hard on families to consider a Monday and a Thursday off on the same week. There were also some core values that were not reflected in looking at a 31st date. For example, to build extra days into the calendar, to achieve that 15th deadline or look at the end of the year. The 3-day Thanksgiving break perhaps was at risk. One of the things you'll see in the data was that the 2-week winter break was really important to both staff and to families. The extended weekend to encompass Martin Luther King Day and Inauguration Day created a challenge. And then at the end of it all, the ad hoc committee did not want to deliver to the superintendent 3 out of 4 calendars that went past the June 15th guidance. And the real thought behind it was, on the August 31st date, was if we're starting a week earlier and not getting out any earlier than we were this year, where's the real value in starting earlier? And so there were a number of things that were points of discussion from that ad hoc committee that I wanted to share with the board tonight, and with the community to make sure everybody understood why we landed on 2 24th options. And as we go through the calendars, you'll kind of see how some of that makes sense. So I want to walk through this chart. It's a little bit hard to read, perhaps on the screen, but one of the things we tried to do was color code it so it made it a little bit easier to read. So any place you see all white, those spaces are exactly the same. Anywhere you see color, there is difference. So for example, on pre-Labor Day, on Labor Day, which is the first line in the left-hand column, if you work across, those days are all off. The Monday before the holiday, the Monday holiday would be off, and then on the pre-Labor Day and the post-Labor, the 2 pre-Labor Days, the Friday would be off before. But the bottom line is Labor Day would be off. However, if you work down to looking at Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, one of the things you'll see is in pre-Labor Day option A, that would be a professional development day. In pre-Labor Day option B, it would also be a professional development day. But in post-Labor Day A and post-Labor Day B, that would be a holiday. And then the Monday before Election Day is the same for all of the calendars, and then you can kind of work down and see where the similarities and differences are as we move through these different choices. So the 4 calendar options, and again, I won't go through these because they're going to be a little bit hard to read on the screen, but there are some components to it that I think are important. The first component for those folks that may be looking at this online is to understand what the key is. So in the bottom right-hand side of the chart, you'll see a legend, and in that legend, it will identify essentially H is for holiday, N is for new teacher, TW is teacher workday, PD is professional development. F in this particular draft is first day of school, which is Monday the 24th of August. H is a holiday again in September, moving through. And then if you go all the way to the end to June, you'll see on June 2nd a small red G, which is graduation. ER means early release. There would be an early release there. And then the year end is Y, which would be on the 8th of June. And ER means early release. And the next day would be a teacher work day. So all of these calendars sort of follow that flow as you look at them. And so as the community observed these, they were able to figure out pretty clearly what the legend was. And then the last thing I want to share about these different options is that in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a note. And that note refers to the diamonds that are in each of the monthly calendars. So if you look up to, for example, September 2020, on this slide, you will see the 19th and the 19th and 28th have diamonds. Directly below that month, it says the 19th is Rosh Hashanah, begins at sunset on the 19th and ends on the 20th, and Yom Kippur starts on the 26th at sunset, on the 27th at sunset and ends on the 28th. And then if you take that and you carry it all the way down to the bottom left, you'll see where it says major religious observances. This is a note that we would like to include in all of our calendars this year that say these are regular school days unless otherwise indicated. Efforts will be made to avoid scheduling tests, activities, and major school events on these particular days. And part of our work, I think, of being a caring community and culture is being clear about what our expectations are for our schools and for ourselves with respect to how we treat those different religious holidays. So let me get to the survey, because I think that's sort of what you're waiting for, is some information about what we saw. So let me begin with sharing sort of who took it and a couple of observations as I move along. First and foremost, we had 1,240 responses. Some have indicated that that might be the largest survey response to any survey in the City of Falls Church Schools in the history of Falls Church Schools. I don't know if that's true, but I would say it's a pretty significant number with respect to the number of people that were out there. So to share who took it, one of the things you'll see is that we're 769 FCCPS parents. That 769 represents 46% of households in the City of Falls Church with students, and we got that number from some mailing labels that we prepared last year, so that became our denominator. We did get 18% of students that took it. It was offered to George Mason High School students only, so that 218 represents 25% of the high school population took the survey. You will see then in staff, there are two different colors yellow. The lighter yellow are staff that live inside the City of Falls Church, and the darker yellow are staff that live outside the City of Falls Church. They're 5% and 13% respectively, 18% total, which is 223, and that represents more than half of the full-time staff that work in the City of Falls Church. And then 2% of the takers of the survey, or 26 people, represented themselves as community members. And then we have 5 total, or less than 1%, that represented themselves as none of the above. So we just assumed that maybe somebody took a survey for the sake of taking a survey because they thought it would be fun. There are a couple of observations in the data that I just wanted to share as we looked at it. The first is not an observation, but more of a comment. One of the things that we did is we operated on and counted on the honor system. As we put it out, that people would vote once per household. I don't know if that happened. It's too hard to tell. We did create a survey that would only allow one survey from each IP address. So my hope is that, well, I know there wasn't a workaround, but my hope is that multiple people in the same household didn't take it multiple times on multiple devices. There may be some circumstances where a parent may have taken it and a student may have taken it, and then maybe another parent may have taken it. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles, so to speak. So what you see here is data that's really predicated on the honor system. We would consider this an overall excellent rate of response. You can't really average averages, but I would say if you look at the overall percentage, we were very close to 50% of the parent population, a really significant portion, over 50% of the staff, which is, I think, excellent, and then 25% of the students at the high school. And then I think one of the things that we're really proud of is that we did also include students in the conversation. Sometimes they do get lost. And so thank you again to Niharika for being part of the ad hoc committee, but also to helping us get the word out about the survey. So here are the overall, these are stack bars that represent the overall data from the survey. And I want to kind of call it out to you just in color scheme so you can kind of see that these stack bars represent different constituencies. So the blue represents our parent population, the orange represents student population, the gray represents staff inside the City of Falls Church, yellow represents staff outside of the City of Falls Church, and dark blue at the top is community, and the very light green at the top represents none. So working from left to right, one of the things you will see right away is that the first bar, the pre-Labor Day option A, has 172 total respondents. And then beneath that is the data table that shows how those respondents replied. So as I look at this, as I look at these data and have sort of tried to observe them in ways that would be meaningful, one of the things that became evident very quickly was that the 2-week winter break was important to everyone. So in option B, in both pre and post Labor Day, which are the two highest getters, those were the two calendars that had 2-week winter breaks. The other two calendars did not have 2-week winter breaks. Second observation in the data is that students were split in pre and post options. So you'll see in looking at the two largest vote getters, 78% or 78 students total voted for pre-Labor Day option B and 75 for post-Labor Day option B. Numbers are very close. Staff appear to have